So for those of you who don't know me or are potentially new to our community, I am Lisa, founder of Fabric Academy and Unwritten Group Marketing Comms Agency. So at Fabric, we exist really with one sole purpose in mind, and that is to help marketers all over the world thrive and do really amazing things in their career. This community is all about providing value. It's about sharing knowledge or stories. It's about giving you support in areas that you need it most. And it's about working together as a community so we can really start to progress and reach our ambitions and fly, do amazing things along the way. We're starting to hear some amazing stories of some of the learners who have come out of the Fabric program. So these guys have got promotions, new jobs, bigger marketing budgets have been agreed, and huge results for some of the organizations that have been through the program. So it's such a brilliant feeling to know that we're really starting to see the benefit of this support and the people that are helping us along the way as well. So this has all been about bringing experts to you, the Level Up series. It's specifically focused on bringing other people who are specialists in their field. And as I said before, today is no exception to that, because we will be hearing from the lovely Paul Lancaster, who is with us today, super connector, innovator, and marketing maven. I'm going to introduce you as Paul, so no pressure there. So Paul has a hugely impressive career, which has spanned 20 years. And in his time, he has helped so many businesses to really start up, to grow and to scale in their journey. And he's particularly helped lots of them through change. And so we're going to be talking a lot about this today as we talk about keep going or pivot, which is the topic of today's discussion. In 2016, Paul founded Plan Digital, which is an award-winning inbound marketing community and events consultancy. And I guess as we're starting to come out of what has been probably one of the most turbulent years we'll all live through, or let's hope it's definitely the one we'll all live through, we're starting to see this question asked more so than ever. Changes on the horizon for lots of us, and a question that I've continuously asked myself throughout my business journey is, should we keep doing more of what we're currently doing, or should we change direction completely? Keep going or pivot, which is the all-important question today. So Paul and I are going to be chatting for the next 30 minutes or so. And at the end of this session, we're going to be opening the floor to you guys to ask any questions that you'd like to ask. And we're going to answer as many of those as we possibly can. So feel free to be popping your questions in the Q&A as we go, and we'll start filtering through them from there. So that's enough of me. A huge welcome to you, Paul. Thanks so much for joining us today. Before we get started with the Q&A, do you just want to give us a little bit of an intro, Paul, a bit about your background and how you got to where we are now?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Delighted to join in, and that was a brilliant introduction, one of the best ones I've seen so far. So my background, basically, for about 15 years, I've helped other people start and grow businesses in jobs where I've been paid to do that. So I've worked for local enterprise agencies, youth enterprise schemes. I worked with the government for a little while. I've worked for big corporates like Sage. And then I finally started my own business just over 5 years ago to do the same sort of thing, but independently and like on my own terms and not relying on grants or funding. Because I've been in situations where we've been doing great things, but then the money's run out and then you can't do the good things anymore. So yeah, that's my whole thing. Pretty much all of my career has been focused on help people fulfill their potential and bring their ideas to life. And I just love doing that. I love meeting new people with new ideas and trying to leverage my network and my influence to try and help them find the people or the support that they need to bring those ideas to life.
Yeah. And I know from my experience, Paul, I mean, you've been instrumental in the Northeast, particularly about bringing communities together, both from a startup perspective and those scaling businesses. And the event that, many of us will know and have been to and enjoyed, Startup Week, was obviously your baby. And, I guess what you've brought us through that period is not just your specialism, but the specialism of lots of different businesses, experts, entrepreneurs who have been there and done it. And we're going to talk about some of those stories today, hopefully.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some questions, Paul, because I've got loads for you today and lots to pick your brains on, and try and get some real useful insights for the people who are on our webinar today. So I guess my first question is an obvious one. As we come out of what has been a really kind of crazy year, and lots of us are starting to question, do we keep going or do we pivot? What type of advice have you got to people when they're trying to decide that question? What are the fundamentals of deciding to stick with what you're doing, or deciding that that isn't working now and it's time to make a big change?
I mean, the title "Keep Going or Pivot", that's always been one of the themes of the Startup Week events, because it's 5 days, 5 themes. So the final day was always keep going or pivot. So how do you keep going or pivot? Should you keep going? Should you stop? Should you change direction? How do you know things are working? How do you know when it's time to stop and change direction? And I think everybody, doesn't matter whether you're starting a business or growing a business or it's an established business, you should regularly review what you're doing and if it's working, and don't just blindly continue with things, because the environment does change. People's tastes change and whatever's good. Well, obviously the COVID's had a massive impact on everyone, and if you're not flexible and not able to innovate and adapt, then you are at risk. You're very vulnerable, and throughout history that's always happened with companies that are just like blindly just sticking and unwilling to change or try new things. So I think as a company, you need to be able to innovate and adapt and respond to what's going on, but also definitely as an individual. I think it's really important to learn how to be entrepreneurial, to have an entrepreneurial mindset, even if you're not running a business. And a lot of companies are looking for people, they're looking for employees with entrepreneurial mindsets, problem solving, ability to adapt and cope with changing environments.
Yeah, and I think that's so very true of a marketing role. In essence, without a global pandemic being thrown into the mix, you have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to read data to know what is working and what isn't working. And if it isn't working, that's okay. But it's about not sticking with the stuff that isn't working and making that kind of brave and bold decision to change. And I guess that's I think you're very right in terms of it, having an entrepreneurial mindset, no matter what role you're currently in, really does serve you well in terms of that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think where it kind of comes from, like say my background was in the startup sort of business advice world, but I read, some of you will be familiar, there's a famous book called The Lean Startup by Reese. Now, it is seen as the Bible for tech startups, but it's not just tech startups can learn from that. The general gist of the book is to do small little experiments, little iterations. Like if you've got an idea, test it out. Don't spend loads of time, money and effort on something. Just like try it out, and if it works, do more of it, and if it doesn't, stop, and don't be afraid to kill it off. And I think people get too fixated on an idea, and I've learned, and I'm very comfortable with killing things off if they're not working. So not just my events, but I've actually started living my professional and personal life according to the 5 themes. So every Friday, I do a little review of how my week's gone, what's worked, what hasn't, what am I going to do more of, what am I going to do less of. And I've got very comfortable with just killing things off and feeling better for it and being more productive as a result.
Yeah. And I think that's really great advice, because sometimes people are a little afraid to kill things off in case it looks like they failed or it hasn't been a success. And I remember a Junmag episode I did a couple of months back with Alice Rowan, who obviously is phenomenally successful in her entrepreneurial journey. And, she talked about how 2 of the businesses she set up through the pandemic, she decided to kill off because one was doing so phenomenally well and the others weren't, that it was actually a much better business decision to actually get rid of those that weren't working and focus on the one that was. So I think that's great advice in terms of just being brave with those decisions as well.
Yeah, but it is hard. It's hard to give up on something if you really believe on it, and sometimes you might just have to park it temporarily and come back to it. But that's why data and measurement and listening to what customers want and what your clients want is really important. That's a key part of marketing, isn't it? To be listening, to always listening and measuring what response you're getting from people. and being able to respond accordingly.
Definitely. And, we're so privileged to be able to have that data and insight now. Years and years ago in marketing, it was definitely more finger in the air and gut feel. We can now measure every single aspect of marketing. So, it's useful to have that foundation and that information to make decisions on. So, and talking of marketing, you're a bit of a pro when it comes to marketing. And you even wrote you co-wrote the book Marketing for Dummies, which is amazing. I didn't know that about you beforehand. How has this past year changed your approach to marketing?
Again, I've just had to practice what I preach, really, because before the lockdown, my whole business or my whole year was very focused on physical events, and the Startup Week event, that was like my main thing. Basically, my whole year's worth of income was centered around that one event. So it was ticket sales and sponsorship, and then I was doing lots of other things along the way and a little bit of consultancy. But I knew I was over reliant on that one event. And then I've just had to completely innovate and think on my feet and come up with new ways to continue to deliver, have an impact and benefit people. But I've had to go back to the core of who I am and what I want to achieve. And it actually doesn't matter what the method of delivery is, as long as I'm still offering like community, collaboration, connection, and helping people fulfill their potential. It doesn't matter whether I do that through a physical event, an online event, a webinar, a podcast, face-to-face, one-to-one coaching. As long as that all sort of serves the overall aim of what I'm trying to do, the method of delivery doesn't really matter. So I've just had to think on my feet and look, what have I got available? And a key thing I have got is my network and my audience that I've already built up over many years, and reminding myself that most people, that's why they come to my events, or that's why sponsors or advertisers want to work with me. They want to tap into my audience and my network. So if that's what people want, how do I give that to them in the way that's appropriate to them?
Yeah. And I guess that's really testament to your marketing skills over the year, Paul, because you've built up this real trust in your own personal brand. We talk a lot about the importance of personal branding now outside of a business brand. People are really connecting, and you're obviously very passionate about those values. They're very authentic to you. And no matter what business journey or business hat you might have on, I'm guessing those values have been consistent throughout each of the businesses.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think I am. People who know who I am and what I do, it's consistent as well. I'm consistently doing things to help people start and grow businesses. I don't just chop and change and suddenly do something like out of the blue. Like it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm doing. There's a really good book actually. So Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, it's called The Startup of You.
Okay.
And it's all about just getting into realizing that it doesn't matter where you go, what job you do, what work you do, you should think of yourself as a startup and try to always develop new skills and focus on your network, obviously, and wherever you go, you'll take that network and that influence with you. And I've seen that as well, where I've moved into paid roles, where one of the reasons I've got that job is because of the network that I've brought with me.
Yeah.
Not just my marketing skills, but my network as well.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really interesting concept, thinking of yourself as a startup each and every time you start something new. And I guess it's that investment in the personal brand as well as, the business brand or what the business is setting out to do, making sure that, your personal values are at the heart of that in every way possible. Did you, when you very first set out, Paul, were you strategic in the sense that you wanted to build this personal brand full of trust and confidence, or did that just happen organically over time?
I suppose I'd already been doing that because I was, the roles I was doing in the past, I worked for local enterprise agencies and youth enterprise schemes, and I was known as that trusted advisor, neutral and impartial and inclusive, and trying to do whatever I could to help people. So But I keep referencing books as well. There's another book called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, which is massive influence on me, because I remember reading that when it came out, and it was all about why are some ideas successful and others aren't. And he says that ideas that are successful, they tend to have three types of people. They have a maven, someone who just loves finding out about new ideas. They have a connector, and a connector doesn't just tell one or two people. They'll go out of their way to think, who do I know that would benefit from learning about this?
Yeah.
And they have sales people or marketing people who will continue to spread the message and keep promoting it. And at the time I thought, I'm definitely a maven. I'm definitely a connector. And I think I'm a pretty good marketing professional. So I thought I'm going to set out to be the best version of all three things. And that's where the idea of being a super connector came about, just a yeah. And it seems to have worked so far.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I love a book recommendation. So we'll follow up with all these book recommendations afterwards, because I'm sure loads of people will be interested in them as well. So what advice would you give to people who are looking to switch up their approach, and what plans should they try and put in place to pivot effectively?
I mean, I've been doing this quite a lot with the coaching that I do. So I've been doing quite a lot of one-to-one coaching with business owners in the last 6 months. And they're mostly people who've been running their business for a few years, great at what they do, but they maybe lost the mojo, or they've kind of got a bit stuck. And it's usually because they're getting pulled into so many different directions. They've kind of forgotten what they're doing or why they're doing it. And so a key thing that I always do, the first conversation I have with them, is reminding them, like asking them, why did you set up this business, or why did you set out on this path, and what motivates and inspires you, what G's you up, even down to like, what music do you like listening to, what do you like doing, and I think that's really important, because a lot of people don't spend the time to actually think about why they're doing what they're doing, like who are they and what motivates and inspires them. Once you're clear on that, everything stems from that. And if it doesn't resonate and it doesn't fit, doesn't align with what you're trying, who you are and what you want to do, you shouldn't do it, really, because it's going to be a bad fit.
Yeah.
So I think for me as well, I've like gone back to that, like the start of last year, I had a bit of coaching from a couple of people, and it was about reminding myself about who I am and why I'm doing it. And it wasn't any surprises. It was just, yeah, of course, that's who I am, and that's why I'm doing it. So helping me stay focused on my own thing.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, especially given that, throughout your journey or your career, you can change direction a lot. Sometimes there's a curveball thrown in there and you try something different. And this last year particularly, I think, has challenged us all to, really think about what's important in life now, and, what do we want out of life, and, how are we going to get the best of that from a work perspective and a personal perspective. And I think, using somebody like a coach or a mentor or just a mate who will be there to give you some honest advice to really check in on yourself and, make sure that you're actually not going off in a direction that isn't going to bring you happiness at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think you can do that, like definitely on an individual basis, but even as an organization as well. Like not everyone, but a lot of organizations have like a mission statement or something written down about why this started out. And I think it's good to go back to that every now and then, think, well, are we still doing what we set out to achieve? And if we're not, well, why we're doing it? Because that definitely happens sometimes with not-for-profits, organizations I've worked with in the past, where it's set up for a very specific reason, and then to keep themselves going after a while, they're chasing the funding.
Yeah.
But they have what's known as mission drift. And before you know it, they're just doing what the funder wants them to do, but they're not necessarily doing what's needed. And that's another reason why I wanted to do things independently, because it was like, well, I can see that there's a need for certain things and nobody else seems to be doing it. So I'll find a way to bring money in to support the things that nobody else is paying for.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, because I would imagine throughout, again, the last year particularly, there will be businesses and marketing departments all over the place who have just had to survive. So they have had to chase the revenue where they might not normally have to do that in order to protect their staff and protect their business. And I guess it's starting to go back again, like you said before, and just check yourself, check the business, make sure that, once this really turbulent period has started to subside, are we still on the right path? Do we need to change our path? Or actually, do we just need to get back to our original path and intentions?
Yeah, exactly. And being like not being too prescriptive about what you're doing, and what like have you don't have to be, you can be quite loose with your aims of what you're trying to do, and that gives you the freedom and flexibility to adapt. But yeah, I think that is important to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you found this, but we definitely found this throughout the last 18 months, that lots of businesses halted their marketing efforts for various different reasons, and some of them very valid, some just because everybody was battening down the hatches to ensure that they survived. Yeah. What would you say to the people who are starting to think about restarting their marketing efforts again? Any advice in terms of just pressing on and doing the same as they were doing before, or starting to rethink about pivoting and moving forward?
I think it's got like one thing I definitely noticed that on the one hand, people definitely didn't seem to be spending money. Like some people just weren't spending any money at all, right? But then there was also, it got very noisy. Like a lot of people were creating content and putting stuff out there. And I was speaking to people who were saying, I'm finding it overwhelming, so I'm actually disengaging from online because it's just too much. I'm on Zoom all the time or Teams all the time. I don't want another online webinar or another course. So I'm just, there's just too much going on. So I'm just coming off LinkedIn. I'm coming off Twitter or whatever. Well, that's a problem. Obviously, if you're relying on your digital marketing, right? But I can see why companies have started suddenly doing courses or webinars or podcasts or whatever. But I also think it's hard enough. Some of it's great, some of it's not so great, right? But it's hard enough creating the content, but to try and build an audience as well is very, very difficult. So what I would suggest to people, I'm probably biased saying this, is like to tap into existing networks, people who've already built up networks and audiences, and pay to play, basically be part of what's already there. And then like feature on other people's stages, other people's platforms, and cross promote. That's probably a smarter way to do it, rather than just trying to do it all on your own.
Yeah, and it's interesting because our webinar last week was all about building a community, and we were trying to get, I guess, across that misconception that it can be done overnight, that people can create this, thousands of followers and, engaged kind of communities, quickly by just throwing a whole load of stuff out on social. And it just doesn't happen like that. And like with any business, it takes a ton of hard work. It takes a lot of time and effort. It's often without much reward in the early days, and certainly not any financial reward. So, it is about patience and consistency and added value. And I think, there's got to be a real genuine intention there to help and serve that community, other than to commercialize on it. But I think in terms of what you're saying there, collaborating with those people who have built those communities is the perfect way to start out if you're thinking about, trying to get a message out to that particular audience.
Exactly. Community, I think, does get overused as a word, right? And what I'm always conscious of is the community doesn't belong to me. Like, there is a Startup Week community, and there's some people are more engaged than others. There's the people who have actually paid to be inside my private Startup Week community now, and I'm very close to them because I do one-to-one consultations or coaching, and I'm looking out for them, creating opportunities for them. So that they're like, it's like concentric rings there, and they're in the center, right? But then you've got a wider community, a looser community of people who've been to my events in the past, and they're maybe not as actively engaged, but they're still interested, and they're waiting for the opportunity to get involved, the right one. Then there's the wider network, the social media followers, and the other people who are just kind of vaguely aware of who I am and what I do. But yeah, the community doesn't belong to me. Like, they choose whether they want to engage with me or not. So I think once you start believing that the community is yours, that's when you start getting into trouble.
Yeah, completely. And that's actually really an interesting perspective, that nobody's community belongs to them. It's a choice of whether to be in there, and it's real testament to your community that they buy into you. You're obviously adding loads of value to those people, and that's why they stay loyal, and that's why they stay engaged. So again, it's back to that authentic purpose, isn't it? Not doing it to commercialize on it, but doing it to really add value and to help people.
Yeah. It's hard. It is hard, because you have to protect that community as well. Because I do have lots of companies who want to be in there and tap into it, and they say, "Oh, right, you've got these numbers. How do you turn them into customers?" It's like, well, I've got to find a way that they can pay to play. They can be in there without it being just hitting people with a hard sell all the time. It's like they're here, and if you want them, you can engage them. But I'm not gonna ram it down people's throats, and that would turn people off if it suddenly was full of ads and like people being sold to all the time.
Well, it becomes a networking space then, as opposed to a real value add, doesn't it? So and I guess from your perspective, how important is it for people to leverage that community, particularly during hard times or periods of change? Is it a good platform to test and trial things?
So which community? My community or a different community?
Just so if you have a community that you've built up, so yours, for example, or if somebody is looking to, say, leverage your community, wants to be involved in that community, is it a good place to go and build relationships, build conversations, get feedback to help make some of those difficult decisions about keep going or pivot?
Well, I'm biased on it, but I think well, I'm going to say yes, but it depends what you're trying to achieve. I mean, like the community is. The people who paid to be in the community are mostly small business owners, like usually micro, like 0 to 9 employees, often 2 or 3 or 1 person businesses. So they're not all startups, but they're all micro, and they're all wanting to learn, and they're wanting to support, and they're all like-minded, and they're encouraging each other, and it is a good supportive vibe that's in there, right? And then. But if people want to, some online communities, Facebook groups, whatever, they don't let you talk about your business. But I want people talking about their business. So at a very low level, it's a place that you can talk about your business and promote what you're doing and try to find partners and customers and clients and collaborators. But then there's also you can just ask direct questions from me and other members, and I'll always answer if I can, and if I can't, I'll tag other people in that I know are better equipped to answer. There's the Founders Friday events. It's an open door. If you're a member, you can give a talk, a 15-20-minute show and tell about yourself, your business, your products. That goes into the private Facebook group, but then I put it on the YouTube channel, embed it into an event recap blog, share it across my social media followers, include it in an email newsletter. So there's depends what you're looking for, really. But if you're looking for a ready-made audience and a ready-made platform to promote either a new business, a new product or service, or something that's relevant to small businesses, I don't think there is anything better. Definitely in the Northeast anyway. So.
Yeah. And I guess, that can apply to all communities, I guess, dependent on what the audience is and who the audience is. People can, leverage that, I guess, to whatever their issue or their problem is. And I mean, I guess, are you finding that organizations are looking for forums like that where they want honest opinions if they're looking to, say, innovate or pivot and set up a new service or, bring a new product to market or, change their business completely? Are they engaging in these type of forums where they can get really honest feedback from customers? And
I would say if the big ones still want to do their own thing. So like the smaller ones, yes. Like I say SME, micro to mid-size, yes, but still some of the bigger ones still. I mean, I'm having some really good conversations with some mega companies at the minute, like the biggest companies you can imagine, right, wanting to be part of it, right? But others want to create their own community from scratch, and they want to own that community, and it doesn't really work. Like it's kind of. I'll get some engagement, but it's, again, like, why don't you just go where the people already are instead of trying to get people to come to you every time?
Yeah.
And I think that's just my observation.
Yeah, yeah. And just, I guess, closing off this section, Paul, with a bit of a mini story, I think, because often lots of us learn from, rather than advice and experience, maybe just people's stories or experiences. So is there anywhere where, talking about pivot or keep going or pivot, is there an example that you could share with us that where you either have done one of those things, you've stuck for too long and it hasn't worked, or you've pivoted and it hasn't worked, and a time where it has been really successful?
I mean, everything I've done over the last 5 years, and particularly the last 18 months, has been an evolution. You know, it's like, it's like with hindsight, you can see it's obvious like how it's got there, but it is little iterations and baby steps and trying. You know, I've tried loads of things, different prices, different ways of marketing and promote. Some have not worked at all, and others have worked. It's like sometimes I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? Like, why are people not responding? And then next thing you know, they are. But I think just having faith that if you keep trying, it will pay off eventually. As long as you're staying true to what you're trying to set out to do. But I mean, the coaching that I'm doing now has come out off the back of the online community. So the physical events I couldn't do, I created an online community to do online events. That worked. So I kept the Facebook group running all year round. People pay to join that. And then because I do one-to-one coaching is when people join, that's everybody gets offered a one-to-one coaching session. I realize some people need more than just an hour, and they need 5 days worth of coaching. So just, yeah, that's a bit of not really an answer, I suppose. But actually, one thing I will say, I did set up a new company last year called Trybes, I wanted it to be a digital platform that would take everything I'd been doing manually and do it online and at scale. And I set that up with 2 co-founders, great team, loads of amazing, like really positive conversations with funders and investors and stakeholders saying, yeah, we love the idea, huge potential, impressive team. But we couldn't get past, like, people kept saying, but the value's in you and what you've already got. Yeah. So it was a brand new business I set up, but actually people wanted what I already had. And I thought that having this online digital platform would make it better for everyone, but realizing people actually still at this point still want me to do what I'm doing. So we've decided to just stop working on that business because it was becoming a distraction.
Yeah.
And there's only so many plates you can spin, and I was juggling too many balls. So I've just had to put some balls down to actually start a wee community. That's what I love doing. That's what people want. I'm going to go back to focusing 100% on making sure the community, the coaching, everybody's getting the most value from that. And if further down the line I can develop this digital platform, I will. But for now, it's not the right time. So I've decided to kill that off.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that, because it's that type of thing that I think is really useful for people who are in this decision-making process of, should I keep going or should I pivot? And, it's a perfect example of where you have been innovative, you've pivoted, you've tried something different, but actually, the data and the insights and the people that you're working with are telling you that what you're doing is what they want. And therefore, to make that decision to just keep doing that, it's a brave one, especially in this world where we're all trying to, make sure that we're ahead of the curve and doing the right thing. So thank you for sharing that. That's, I'm sure, probably really useful for people to hear that, and quite comforting.
No, I mean, it wasn't easy. We spent 10 months doing that, so you got 10 months down the line and you think, well, do I really want to stop doing this now? But it's the right thing. And as soon as I decided to stop doing it, felt right. It felt a bit of a relief. Yeah. And now and actually the process of working on Trybes helped me improve what I was doing with the Startup Week community. It helped me refine what I was doing there and remind me that actually I don't really want to be a tech startup founder. I love what I'm doing. So nothing was wasted. in that.
No, absolutely not. And, every opportunity brings an opportunity to learn, doesn't it? There's always, it's, of all the doors I've ever kind of opened, whether it was an intentional door or not, has taught me something along the way. And often those experiences, for all the right reasons, might not work out as you'd planned them to, but there's often huge learnings along the way. So that's a great example of that. Thank you for sharing that. So we have some questions from our audience, which I'm going to dive into. And yeah, we'll keep you on your toes with this, Paul. So we've got our first question, which is, any tips for creating an entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, how have I done it? So, a lot of people talk about entrepreneurs born or made, right? I definitely think you can have certain qualities that increase the chances of being entrepreneurial, but I became entrepreneurial by reading books, by going to events, by hanging out with entrepreneurial people. So the jobs I've had over the years, I've kind of maneuvered myself into positions where I've been rubbing shoulders with entrepreneurial people, innovative people, creative people, listening, learning, and just immersing myself in that world. So, I mean, that's not an overnight thing, but you can increase the chances of becoming an entrepreneur by going to startup and entrepreneurial events and certain videos and podcasts and certain books. So I've definitely, if there's one book I would encourage everyone to read, is The Lean Startup, because every industry can learn from that. And I used Lean Startup principles to create my Startup Week event.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I read The Lean Startup years and years ago, and then reread it again when we were creating Fabric. And it's funny how different areas of that book resonate with you at different times, and you can see the practices that you pull through and also the bad habits that you can easily fall back into if you don't discipline yourself. And I think, entrepreneurial books are amazing. I think the company that you keep, so as you just said there, being around other people who have that energy and that excitement and that, that risk-taking element of taking an idea and bringing it, to reality is really important to try and probably push you a little as well, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that was a key part of the Startup Week events as well. It's hard enough to be innovative and bring new ideas to life, right? But if you're in a room full of entrepreneurial, innovative, enthusiastic people, it becomes more believable.
Yeah.
That's an important part of the events and the online community as well. But to surround yourself with those types of people is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got a question here from Grace. So this is I'm really interested in this answer. So how do you find the time to make a new idea a reality?
Yeah, give yourself space to do that, right? So I mentioned before about the 5 different themes of the Startup Week events and how I've been using those 5 themes since December 2018, right? So I structure my week according to 5 themes. So for me, Monday is Inspiration Day. Right, so my day, I might do other things, but basically Monday for me is a day of reading books, watching TV, watching films, listening to podcasts, listening to music, meeting people face to face or doing Zoom calls with interesting people, going different places. Monday for me is my day of filling up my cup and inspiring and motivating myself and giving myself the space to think and not necessarily do, just to. And then on the Tuesday is the getting started day. So I've been inspired and motivated and I'm full of ideas. So then it's like, okay, now I'm going to get it done. I'm just going to start these new things. So I think everybody could learn or try to adopt these 5 themes. So inspiration, getting started, funding and finance, growing and scaling, keep going or pivot, and get into the habit of giving yourself the space the permission to take a bit of a pause and to think and be just listen and learn and be.
Absolutely love that. I love that. I love that. A Monday is an inspiration day. There's no such Monday morning blues if you're walking into work and maybe not even walking into work, maybe just waking up now. But have these plans to just be inspired, whatever method that might be. That's a really, absolutely love that. Hopefully that's helped, Grace. I think there's some really good practices there for implementing in your day. And I think, it's so very true that particularly entrepreneurial people, we're just so fast paced. We're always on to the next thing and always on to the next thing. And I've realized, particularly over the last couple of years, that that space is more important than anything. It's more important than the doing. It's more important than the next thing. It's the thing that gives you, as you said, it feeds you the energy and the excitement and the ideas to go and make these things happen. So love that. I'm going to pinch that and have an inspiring Monday every week from now.
Yeah, it's good. You know, like I think if more people, individuals or companies did that, there would be more productive and happier places as well. And there's a lot of talk about the 4-day work week. Right? Well, in a way, I am doing a 4-day work week because my Monday is like not a holiday because I'm still working, but it's a fun day. And a weekend isn't always relaxing for people. Yeah. Sometimes weekends aren't. You know, that you're busy doing stuff around the house, or you might be running around after your family, or like it's not always a relaxing time for people. So for me, Monday is my day for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. Okay, so next question. How do you know when it's right to keep going or pivot?
Yeah, good question. How do you? I mean, I think you get better at knowing the more you practice it. But I mean, sometimes it is just a gut feel, but the gut feel it comes over with experience, time and experience. But I wouldn't advise people to just knee-jerk reaction. I wouldn't just kill something off straight away. But you got to like, is it really not working, or is it just, am I really putting the effort in, or like what is it that's not working? And it might just be a subtle little tweak just to get it working again. But that's why you need to look at data, and you need to look at analytics, and you need to ask people and look more closely at how you're delivering things. Because I mean, even like, I don't know for certain if this is the case, but recently, when I first set up the online community, I was using Go Cardless because it's a quick and easy way to collect payments, right? But Go Cardless is great, but it's ideal for subscriptions. And originally, the online community, I wanted it to be an annual subscription. But then some people said, even though I changed it to be just a one-off payment. I was like, instead of an annual, it's just pay once and that's it. You've got lifetime membership, right? But when people sign up, it still asks them to set up a direct debit. And even though I've said everywhere it's just a one-off payment, some people are reluctant to set up a direct debit and put all your bank details in. It was a friend of mine who said, I was just about to sign up, but when it said direct debit, it put me off. Yeah. That like potential friction of that, I hadn't really thought about it. So I've changed from Go Cardless to Stripe. Well, Stripe is a much faster way to take a payment. And since doing that, that's my kid, Sharon.
The joys of working at home.
You don't pivot. But they've been very good up until now. But Stripe, since I've done that, definitely just that simple change, responding to my friend who told me the number of people who are signing up was massively increased.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know for certain if it's just, but I think it is, because I could see that a lot of people were going to the sign up page, but not signing up.
Yep. Yeah.
There's something not right here. And it was only when she said that put her off, I was like, yeah, actually, I think you're right there.
Yeah, really interesting. And I guess, that's testament to actually data and insight is so valuable if you listen to it and act upon it, and how it can really help with these decisions. And I don't know if this is just me, but there still has to be a big part of gut feel, right? In terms of, is it right or is it not right? You can take the data, you can take the measurement, you can take the insight, and you should, but you have to trust your gut sometimes, and just, does it feel right? And I don't know, are you still led by that, or are you more careful?
Yeah, no, yeah, I think, but I'd also think like that sort of the ethos and like who I am and what am I trying to achieve here. That's what helps me decide whether to keep going with something or not, because I don't think it's good to just chop and change all the time and panic, and because sometimes things don't work, but they will work eventually if you just keep like refining it. And so, but again, that it's probably a bit of a woolly answer, but yeah, definitely experience comes with it, and but you need to be clear on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And it's such a difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because it's such a fine balance between chopping and changing and giving up on something too quickly when small tweaks, like you just talked about, could really make a big difference. Or that point where you decide it's time to put this to bed and actually focus on something else. And, every circumstance is completely different. And that decision is, it's not it shouldn't be a heat of the moment one. It should be a considered one, but it is a tricky one to make.
Definitely.
Okay, so next question. So where do you start with building your own personal network?
Okay.
Taking you back 5 years now, where did you start?
Well, I mean, for me, it goes even further back. I mean, it's when I think about it. So for me, Twitter has always been my favorite platform, but in more recent years, LinkedIn is now my favorite, I think, because I've built up quite a lot of followers on Twitter, like over the years. I mean, not huge numbers, but it's still like 13,000 followers on Twitter, right? But that's different roles that I've had have brought different followers. So I've got followers from not just the Northeast, but across the UK and overseas, right? And I built that up just by being consistent. I only ever talk about startups, small businesses, marketing, social media, innovation, the Northeast. That's all I ever talk about on Twitter, right? But I'm finding it harder to build engagement or get a response on Twitter than I used to. Whereas LinkedIn, I'm finding it easier now. Yeah. And but I did already have an audience already before I started doing it. But video for me, definitely in the last 18 months has been big for me. I've been doing a lot of interview, a lot of Q&A style interviews, and LinkedIn Live. I've been doing a lot of LinkedIn Live interviews with people, and just putting myself out there and just forcing myself to do videos seems to be working.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. And I don't know if this is because we've all been locked down for the last 18 months. It probably is. But again, you don't know for certain. But video is such a great way to connect with people as close to in person as we've ever had without being able to be in person. Yeah. And I think people are craving that personal connection still, aren't they? When we're not able to be at live events, to actually have somebody like we're doing now, real conversation, real stuff going on in the background, kids here and dogs there. And it's as close to being in real live person as you possibly can. And there's something really endearing and really personable about that. And, Instagram, they're talking about the future of Instagram being much more video led than just image led now. And I think it's that, it's just another way to be able to get that personal connection outside of content and outside of graphics.
Yeah, I mean, something else that I started doing. My daughter's just dancing around. Something I did last year, which was like, so for me, Instagram, I've never really been particularly good on Instagram. I've not really known what to share on it, right? But last year during the lockdown, I started skateboarding again, right? I'm 44 and I started skateboarding again. And last time I was skateboarding was when I was in my early teens, right? But I think I'm going through a midlife crisis or something, right? but I thought, okay, I love skateboarding, so I'm going to go out skateboarding and I'm going to document where I go and take photos of the city centre, Newcastle city centre and Gateshead. And for me, that was a little bit more, I want to show a bit more behind the scenes, what inspires me. So skateboarding, graffiti, street art, books that I read. So less business and more, a bit more me. I still don't talk about really personal stuff, and I don't share photos of my kids or talk about my kids. That's Facebook. That's like with my friends and family on there. But still, it was a bit more behind the curtain, I suppose. And I think that's a good way of helping people. You won't necessarily get any business straight away from that, but business is all about people anyway. If they like you and they think, oh, well, that person, they seem like a nice person and I'm interested in them and I like to get to know them better, then that's half the battle, I think.
Completely, absolutely. You're so right there. Okay, last question, Paul, just before we wrap up. So when it comes to channels, how do you know when to switch your strategy to focus on new things? So like Instagram, where video content we just talked about, Clubhouse, which was huge and then gone.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, because I mean, there's so many channels, you can't necessarily do them all. Goes back to just thinking, well, where are my audience? Like, who are you trying to reach? Because and that goes down to like age and demographics, and I mean, sweeping statement, but um,
Definitely the most interesting webinar I've done in ages.
sorry.
I'm so interested in what's going on behind you.
Yeah. So I mean, at TikTok, I haven't done anything on TikTok. I just don't know what I would do on TikTok, and it's not. I think that's just a waste of my time. But for a lot of what I'm doing, I'm trying to influence change. I'm trying to reach business owners and decision makers. So LinkedIn is has been a really good thing for me, and definitely video through that. So Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as well. Instagram has brought a slightly different audience to what I'm doing. Podcasts, it's interesting how many people listen to my podcasts who aren't on Twitter, they're not on LinkedIn, they're not on Facebook. But Clubhouse, I was really into Clubhouse for a bit, and I do think it's amazing, but it's very American, or it was very American. And I thought, well, my audience isn't American, so I'll use it more to listen and learn. And but I'm not really going to get any business out of that. So I've come off. I'm still on it, but I'm not really on it, because I was finding I was spending. You need to spend a long time on there to get anything of value. So
yeah, and I think that's such an important point, and something that I bang on about all the time is, your personas, understand your personas inside out and back to front. And if you do the proper research into each of your customer groups, and not just, segmentation or demographics, but really the emotional and behavioral and the psychological traits of this customer, you will know where they hang out, and you will know where they spend their time and for what purpose. And that will really give you the knowledge about, where to put your messages, where to spend your time on which sites. And we're running I'm so obsessed with personas, as most people know, but we're actually running a free mini course at the moment on personas specifically. And this is all just to help people make these decisions, because it's so tough in marketing now to try and understand where to spend your time and where to put your efforts, because there is so many options. You could just be running around in a whirlwind trying to do a little bit of everything. And for me, that's always been a surefire way to go, this is who we're talking to, this is where we're spending their time, this is where we need to focus our efforts, outside of personal kind of like of a site or not. Like, if you're going for a business audience or you're going for a consumer audience, understand where they are.
Yeah, and it goes back to that, like, you don't have to do it all on your own. If somebody else is already doing it well, just tap into their network, like leverage their audience and their platform, so that you don't feel like you have to do everything on your own. That's what I would suggest.
Absolutely. And I think that's really, really brilliant advice to almost wrap us up. Do not feel like you have to do everything on your own. And that goes for marketing, it goes for business, it goes for just life in general, doesn't it? That there are people there who have been there before you, or have a community that you want, or can help you with a question. So use that network of people. Well, Paul, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. We've managed to stay focused on you and not too much attention in the background. I'm dying to see the skateboard scoot past that sofa at some point. But we won't do that to you today. Yeah. Thank you for giving up your time. It's been really, really useful. I'm sure everybody's got loads out of that. Check Paul out on all the social sites. I mean, his community is wonderful. It really is. So well worth being part of that, and having Paul's specialism on a one-to-one basis. And if anybody is interested in our free mini course, which I've just mentioned there, jump on the Fabric